And if he wants to lay down, here.
Is it okay to let him kind of roam around?
Sure, if he's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So long as there's no other dogs in here.
No, there's no dog come in. So I had just read over your form. Seemed like a week ago, you had Justice got in the face.
Yeah.
And a couple other incidents, but it was with breaking up a dog fight or something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. He's had 2 of those incidences, and then the one like 2 weeks ago now seemed a little different. He was in bed in a new bed that he had never previously been in, and it was dark and he was kind of in and out of sleep, and I laid down behind him, and I don't know if I startled him or if I was touching him in a way like on his face that he didn't like, and he was facing away from me and whipped his head back and bit me on the nose.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
And was it active like fight, or was it like his mouth was open and he happened to catch you?
So he didn't like clamp down, I don't think, because I didn't have anything on the underside, but it was strong enough that it went all the way through my nose, and needed a ED visit and
Gotcha.
like a nose person.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I see what looks like to be a couple of marks on him here, or is that just from the cold?
But he has, well here, the patch that he has there predates our time with him, but he also has one of his ears here.
Yeah, I see that.
It was cut, and we don't really know the backstory behind that, other than he was found as a stray when he was about 2 months old in somewhere in the city. He had gone to, I think, 2 other foster homes before we got him at 4.5 to 5 months old. But he had, the mark there. He had ringworm when we got him, and we initially just thought that was like a ringworm mark, but this is a year and a couple months later, and it's still there. So we don't know the full story there.
Gotcha. And you got him, I'm sorry, how old?
He was about 4.5 to 5 months, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I see. Yeah, he's just got part of the ear missing.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and fill me in on just like what you've experienced, and then what our goals are and all that.
Yeah. So obviously the biting, it's been 3 times now, and so we're just kind of nervous that it's going to keep happening, and we don't have the right knowledge to know how to prevent it.
Okay.
And then I feel like the other main issue is he's getting more and more reactive to other dogs. So previously, I'd say like before he turned 1, we were able to go to dog parks and meet other dogs, have other dogs come into the home, and he'd be fine, but now it's been increasingly reactive when we see dogs on walks.
Yeah.
Like we, just can predict that he's gonna react poorly, so we've kind of stopped taking him.
Yeah, and so he goes to daycare twice a week actually, and initially when he was going, he had a couple like little tips with dogs there. One of the bites that actually came from one of the handlers there that he bit was when they were breaking him up, and then since then he's had a really successful string of he's probably gone 40 consecutive times without any sort of significant incident. Like he'll sometimes come and they'll say, oh, he got a little nip here, and usually it's just like rough play, kind of with dogs he's getting along with. But we see him doing well with dogs in that kind of controlled environment, and with he does kind of get a select group based
Dogs
on
he knows, I think.
Yeah, but when we are around unknown dogs, like she said, like the reactivity, we just kind of don't know what to trust and what the outcome would be if we were to be a little bit more allow a little bit more interaction in our day-to-day. So I guess just trying to figure out
And if we keep ignoring him, he's gonna start ramping up and barking and.
Sure, she's getting frustrated.
Yeah.
When did he start going to daycare?
This was in April. I think it was it was right after kind of the pandemic, and he was just not getting a lot of time, because we used to do a lot more outdoor, kind of with other people around the dog park, and we were just kind of not doing any of that. So I think it was April probably. Yeah. And he's been going consistently since then, twice a week, skipping a week here, a week there, sometimes for whatever reason.
How long after you got him did that start? Because you got him at 4.5, 5 months, right?
We got him over Thanksgiving, so.
Okay, so about 5 months.
5 months, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. And so one bite was to a handler, they're breaking up a dog fight, and the second one was to, I think, a similar situation, another little scuffle. Was it same place, or was it a different place?
No.
Different place. It was a dog park by the house.
Okay.
He was off leash. It seems like that dog may have snapped at him first.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the case. Like a dog will snap or be protective over a ball, and then he'll just go
Sure.
at him.
Yeah.
And so it's the same scenario. That dog's handler tried to pull him apart, and he reached around and bit his arm.
Did they say what triggered that fight? Did they
The one at the daycare, they said that it was, yes, at the time they did. I think it was a treat. He's very resource guarding the food.
Okay.
And they said that they were doing some sort of, they do like 2 sessions a day of like working on a specific training cue.
Uh-huh.
And I think they did a treat very close, and that's what triggered that. They also said there was another time that didn't result in any sort of human bite, but one of the other times he had to get separated from a dog. They were both like coming in from separate rooms in like a narrow hallway.
Mm-hmm.
2 times that's happened.
Yeah, and they just kind of went into it a little bit. It was like a dog that he got along with and continues to get along with. It was just they had like clash at that moment, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, the food was the trigger for the one where it actually resulted in a bite.
Have you seen him resource guard with you, or are you able to remove things from him?
We've been able to, I'd say, consistently remove things from him, but he does like, I honestly think I've been too trusting of him because I've like reached into his mouth and gotten stuff that he was probably guarding.
He's ramped up.
Yeah,
Like, I think we both felt comfortable getting things from him before. I certainly don't feel comfortable now. You can tell when he has a really high value thing, he covers
Absolutely.
and like hides in the corner and
Mm-hmm.
crouches over it. And like will growl if my dog tries to go near him.
Correct, and then he lives with like a mini doodle or something like that.
Yeah, they coexist fine. They don't really interact much. They'll play tug of war, but I feel like my dog is pretty standoffish. And
Okay, so, I'm sorry, what's the other dog's name?
Henry.
Henry?
Mhm.
So Henry is your dog.
Mhm.
So you came into a relationship with Henry, and then you guys got this guy together.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you're intending on getting a puppy.
Well, yeah. We just moved in together, so it was like separate households
Okay.
initially was the plan, and then
yeah. And yeah, this bite incident with her happened like a few weeks into me moving in.
Mm-hmm.
After the ball had already been rolling on the new puppy too, so it was just like a lot of convergence of things.
That's a lot of dogs.
yeah.
Any reason to get handline 3?
That's her department.
Well, I wanted 2, and then we moved in together. That's him. The idea was my dog previously lived with another doodle, and they got along great. They played all the time. And now I think he's honestly kind of afraid of Esther. Like, they just kind of sit on their separate corners on the couch and don't interact. We don't, take them out for walks really together.
Sure.
So it just kind of.
And what happens if you get a puppy, and that puppy is too puppy, and then your dog doesn't like the puppy?
Yeah.
'Cause that's a real common thing.
Mhm.
The reason why I bring that up is, well, one, I read your thing, and I'm like, okay, this is something, and then I go, oh, that, right? And because this guy's he's actually easier than you think it is, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
But he's a powerful dog.
Yeah.
He's a good size. He's already got, a couple of bites on his record and stuff like that. Is that, if anything, I really prioritize getting this under control, getting more trust in there.
Yeah.
That'll be a big factor is
Yeah.
trust. Because if you bring a puppy too soon, or you leave, how do you say, you don't get that point of trust, you're going to be on the edge all the time. Okay. You're going to put him back on the leash, but when you clip him to his flat collar, and I'll tell you what to do.
To just the collar, you said?
The flat collar,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do is bring him with you here,
Okay.
and then when you have a seat, I'm going to have you pull up on the flat collar and then push down on the butt to put him in a sitting position.
Okay.
And every time he gets up, you're just going to keep repeating that. Don't say sit, don't say anything like that, just keep repeating. And then up, and then push down. Yep. That collar's loose, by the way.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. That's going to be a problem. Okay, and I've been doing this for 10 years. I've seen similar situations, and they don't work out very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
The tentative plan now is to have the new dog at my parents' house in Naperville for a while until we can like do a slow intro, see how things are gonna pan out. Because obviously I don't want anyone to get hurt.
Right. So you're set on it.
I mean, yeah, it's already kind of.
Okay. Well, just be aware that things don't always pan out well.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually have a couple other clients right now with puppies, and the dog, the residing dog, is not liking the puppy. Okay, and in their cases, it's not such a big deal because the dogs are the same, similar in size.
Yeah.
You know, here we have a difference. And I had another client who had a Rhodesian, but I trained her dog a year ago. Or no, actually 2 years ago because it was pre-pandemic. And then they got a puppy at the start of the pandemic, but it had already been a year that they got the dog under control. And then I helped them, and then they become acclimated and they're just fine, you know. But the most common thing that I see is, the issue that I potentially see is dogs correct dogs by biting, or puppies, right? And we know that he's a guy that does not like to be corrected. Because on a couple of instances, that's what triggered the thing, right?
Yeah.
So let's say he's with the puppy, and the puppy's annoying him. He may correct the puppy, and he may overcompensate, right? Because typically, if the dog corrects and another dog corrects back, it usually builds up to something, right? It's usually like not a straight like how would you say, overbite.
Yeah.
So the concern would be if the puppy does something, either to him or your other dog, and it triggers something, he may overcompensate.
Yeah.
And that's where that happens. And I actually had a client, they ended up not training because I told them not to do it, but they have a Cane Corso. He's a 130-pound dog.
Oh my God.
And he had 2 to 3 bites by the time he had the consultation, and they had just gotten a puppy. And they had the puppy only for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he attacked the puppy within those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I told him, and it was another Cane Corso, and I told him, like, this is already 2 weeks in, your dog already bit the puppy. There was also the other 2 incidents that you had. And then, as I talked to him, the guy was like, I'm picking up you're telling us to not keep this puppy. And I said, yes. Because, one, they have to muzzle condition their dog. It's a Cane Corso, it was 130 pounds. They got a second Cane Corso. I'm like, do you really want to pull these 2 dogs apart in a year to 2 years if they're fighting each other? And they didn't think about that, you know, and then they also had kids, and I'm like, this is a bigger picture, right? And they're like, oh, okay, so they ended up just rehoming the puppy, you know? Because the puppy was also terrified of the Cane Corso after the attack.
I'm sure.
So, you know, that just making it realistic to you.
Yeah.
I walked into homes with dead dogs, and I think people aren't aware that dogs do kill dogs, and it happens.
I have no doubt that he, could do damage on it.
Correct, right, so just be mindful of that. Going to the incidents, the reason why I said that this is easier than what it looks like, at least from what I'm hearing so far, is a dog biting a person during a fight is not uncommon. It does not mean he's actively aggressive to somebody. We call it redirected aggression. And if in the year and a half that we've been open, we've only had 1 bite. Okay. And it was a territorial bite with the dog entering into the space. And we got it, the dog got the bite, and then we immediately disengaged the fight, and that was it, done deal. Okay, it wasn't a big old spiel. But I always tell people, if your dog gets into a fight, I know it's we panic and we jump in, that is a great way to get bit. Right. Okay. So the 2 bites that happened over in the dog scuffle really don't factor into aggression for me. Okay, I would expect that to happen. So it's like if you're at a bar and you get in a fight and people jump in, so like people punching people, right?
Yeah.
Except dogs bite.
Yeah.
That's how they resolve things. So it doesn't transfer well into our world.
Yeah. I have a question about that. So how come then the other dog isn't getting injured, or like he's not getting injured when they're fighting dog and dog? Like.
Sure. So a lot of times when a dog fight happens, they'll walk out with like no punchers.
Yeah.
Right, nothing, because it looks worse than it is. Because there you see teeth and then the right. So it looks worse. But then when someone jumps in, what happens is they tend to pull the dogs apart. And when you pull dogs apart, that actually intensifies the situation.
Okay.
They try harder to get to the other dog. Okay. We do this in protection training. If a dog is actively being aggressive, you'll see us pull the dog back.
Yeah.
Because we want them to bite harder. We don't want them to feel like they're going to lose that grip. Okay, so that's why we don't pull dogs away from fights. If anything, we'll choke them out, and they have to actively release on their own.
Basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you try to pull them out, you're going to rip muscle, you can tear, or they re-bite, now you have another bite site. Okay?
Yeah.
So that I don't hold against them. because he didn't actively try to go for anyone.
Right.
Resource guarding, well, it's controlled context. We know if he's around a piece of food or something, he may guard it, right? Or he will guard it, so we can actually work with that. In your instance, it sounded like you caught him by surprise.
Yeah.
You're not the first person. You're not going to be the last person.
Yeah.
One of the first bite stories I ever heard was actually way when I first started. I had this client, she was like 7 years old, with a 100-pound black lab. And coincidentally, it was like her sister or her best friend was like bragging about how they had a German Shepherd from a puppy and they could do whatever they wanted to the dog. And they had the dog for years. And the dog was sleeping on the couch. So as they're bragging about, I can do whatever I want to my dog, the dog was sleeping and she went to put her face in the dog's face and the dog woke up and bit her. Okay? And I said, yo, I'm like, that's what I would expect, right?
Yeah.
And then she was like, why? That dog's aggressive. I'm like, how would you feel if you just woke up to someone holding your face to their face? And she's like, I freak out. I go, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the dog did, right? Or maybe she was doing that to the dog. Finally, the dog just said, not today.
Yeah.
And decided to set up a boundary, right? So dogs bite each other as part of the language.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when people say like, oh, my dog's not aggressive, because that's not true. Every dog is capable of becoming aggressive. Mm-hmm. It is not a characteristic that your dog is born with or without. Mm-hmm. So think of aggression as an escalated form of anger. Mm-hmm. Humans can become aggressive, right? But there's usually a precursor, right? Mm-hmm. And we also look at the reasoning. If someone kills someone and they say, hey, they were going to stab me with a knife, and I thought I was going to die, so I killed them. We go, oh, that's self-defense, right? You're not guilty, right? Same thing for dogs, right? So, but dogs live in a primal world. They don't live in the world that we do. They settle things themselves, you know? And like, let's say it's just a treat, and you're like, dude, there's more treats in the cabinet, right? Yeah. He doesn't know that. Yeah. He just thinks, hey, there's a treat here, and I don't know if I'm gonna get it again. Yeah. So I'm gonna guard it, okay? Some dogs don't care about stuff, other dogs do, just like people. Some dogs really care about their possessions. Some people are like, yeah, I care about my possessions, but not that much to fight over it. You know? Yeah. So it's the same thing, we're not that different. The only thing that really differentiates us is we have imagination, we have language, and we can see past, present, future, whereas dogs really just see present. Yeah. Okay? So that's why when you told me everything, I'm like, okay, I'm like, it's not as bad as it seems, because we can avoid a lot of this stuff. The dog I saw yesterday, and I just posted a video of him up on my Instagram story.
Oh, I think we saw it, the gray kitty.
Yeah, right. And then like, he's going crazy, and then like,
I was like, oh, it's not that
bad. No. So that case is different because I didn't need to do anything. I was just existing in the room, and he wanted to go after me, right? Yeah. So that's the difference. Yeah. Okay, because some dogs are seeking to be aggressive or whatever, right? And he was, even though he looked bad, he still wasn't that bad. Yeah. Because I was able to calm him down simply, right? Yeah.
Now, if there were a dog in that corner, he would be the same way, I think.
Yeah, and I get it. And part of your problem here is your harness. Harness creates frustration. So that dog was on a harness, and then when I took him off the harness, what happened? Yeah. He calmed down because I put him on the appropriate tool, right? So the reason why harnesses promote aggression or frustration is dogs have a thing called opposition reflex, where when they feel pressure, they want to go against it. So, like I said earlier, detection work, if you have a dog lunging at someone and you want to create more aggression and control it, we pull back to kind of pull them away because we feel like they're going to lose that object or that target. Yeah. And it creates frustration, and then once we see enough, we let them go to reward the frustration, right? So if he's seeing the dog, and maybe he's throwing a tantrum, and like, I want to play with that dog, and they can look aggressive because he's barking, whatever, right? But then you pull him back. Now you're adding agitation and frustration. Now you're trying to piss him off. So then finally, if he does get to the dog, what may have been just a simple, hey, I want to play, becomes, now I want to bite you.
Which that sounds like very relevant to him, because he is a dog that we've seen like do very well in just off-leash play before he, you know.
Yeah. But then there are some dogs that don't start out like some dogs will start out like he wants to see him, so he starts whining like this. We don't let him go, and it ramps up. But then there's other dogs, and you can almost predict what dog there, but he automatically goes to the snapping, growling, lunging.
It can be their energy.
Yeah.
Right? So like more commonly would be my dog is fine, but if the dog barks at him, my dog will flip out.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Because that dog felt threat first and the dog pushed threat back, right? So that's super common.
Yeah.
I have a dog right now who's already trained on an e-collar, but is super reactive and is friendly off leash. Okay, on leash, super reactive, off leash, very social.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it's because on the leash you remove flight response. Okay, your dog can't get away from the stressor, so now it's a loose fight response. Okay, so it can be a number of different things. Ultimately, it's like it doesn't really matter what's fueling the reactivity. It's just fixing this, because this is part of the problem too.
Right. Yep.
Right, because he doesn't want to sit still. Right, and then earlier when you let him roam around, what happened? I'm bored. I've sniffed everything in here. Let's do something else. Right? It's, he's bullying you, and he's saying he wants to do something else, and that's also part of the problem.
He's big. Yeah, he's a big I guess demand barker too. Like when if her dog has a toy, and he really wants a toy, like his go-to is just standing near him and just barking incessantly.
And this is way more delayed. Like at home, it's one line, and then it's bark, 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 bark.
Sure. So that we have to fix too.
Yeah.
Because it's all the same stuff. Like you can't let them get away with a couple things here and then want to be fixed these things here, and it has to be across the board because then it becomes inconsistent. Okay. So I'm assuming before you guys booked your consultation, you did some research on us and you read up on how we train and everything, right?
Yeah. One of it's a friend of a friend recommended you.
Okay.
It's Maddie, I think.
Oh yeah.
Work with you, I don't know.
Yes, she's one of the trainers here.
Okay.
She works with me, she's my puppy trainer, correct. So here, we use e-collar. All my dogs, 6 months and older that I train are on e-collar because it's the best and most effective method. So there's 3 primary training methods. There's a number of them, but the 3 are the most popular. There's positive only, or positive reinforcement, which has single-digit success rate. You need to have a number of things working in your favor. 1 has to be a dog that's really food motivated. 2 doesn't really care about the environment. 3 wants to work or has drive for something. 4, we need a person who's consistent. 5, someone who's going to dedicate years to actually train your dog. And 6, be super patient. Okay, and that's only to get and the obedience is ultimately not reliable in the end. But you have to have all these things in order for that to work. Okay. Then we have gentle leader and prong collar, which are kind of in the same spectrum, which gives you more control over the dog on leash. 40 to 60% success. But then when you remove the leash, now you don't have control anymore. E-collar is the only tool on or off leash that gets me as close to 100% as possible, even in an emergency type situation. While your dog is running away, chasing a squirrel and heading towards the street, I can make him return. Okay? So, knowing that, why would I work with any other tool if this one tool is going to get me as close to 100% as possible? That's also why I have such a good or high consistency rate amongst how far my clients get. Because the tool itself is a consistent tool, pending the owner follows through with the homework. The most common thing that holds people back is they don't go high enough on the collar to correct their dog. Right? So my collar goes 0 to 127 in increments of 1. So if, let's say the dog's number 65, for example, is backwards whining, and I tell you 65, and you do it, and he stops the whining, and he just shuts up for the rest of the class, right? But then you come back, and I'm like, how'd it go? Like, man, Jesse was super whiny. I'm like, well, how'd you go? You're like, 35. You're not gonna get anywhere. And that's where people struggle. That is the biggest drawback to e-collar as a human, because they feel bad. And I tell them, dogs bite each other. Like, you have an example yourself, right? You have an example from the daycare, right? That's just their language. That's how they communicate. They're primal animals. And people want to act like they can learn to be positive only and being put in timeout in the kennel and stuff like that. No, that's not how it works. Dogs don't put each other in timeout. Dogs don't give each other treats. They don't give each other fluoxetine. They bite each other. That's the dog world, right? So all my clients are always like, I can't believe this works so fast. I said, yes, because we're training in their language. So if I'm here talking in Spanish, do you think you're gonna, unless you speak Spanish, you're gonna know what I'm saying? Right? I'm not gonna teach you anything. I need to talk your language. Right? Same thing for the dog. People keep talking to a dog in the human language when they talk in the dog language. Once you understand that, that's what makes things very easy. Right? So, e-collar is more commonly known as a shock collar. It's not a shock, you're not electrocuting your dog, okay? It's a term that comes from the older models. They had like 5 settings. So obviously the jump in power between those settings was much greater than they are now. So now, I have 122 more divisions than the 5 level one.
Yeah.
So it's the same output, but just more nuanced, okay? The other thing is the positive only now. They want to use words like shock and torture and hurt and pain and all that stuff to deter people from using the tool.
Right.
Okay, because it makes people feel bad or feel guilty.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that.
Yes. The technology is actually used on humans. They use it in physical therapist offices and they use it in chiropractic. Okay. If you go to the wall, you can literally go to CVS, across the street, go in the back section, and you'll see what's called a TENS unit. Okay? Yeah, that's an e-collar. Okay, so it's just a muscle stimulator. Okay, so if you ever seen those commercials, it's like,
yeah,
that's an e-collar. Okay,
yeah.
but people they misinterpret it and they think like, oh, you're electrocuting your dog because it's an e-collar, right? No, that's not how it works. So once you understand that, it's like, oh, okay. So why is it effective? Well, because it's physical. It's a muscle contraction, right? And the way we teach it is I want them to see it as a line of communication. Okay? So most people think of these things as a punisher. It's like the prong collar, the spiky looking one.
Yeah.
When people see that, they think like, oh my God, like your dog must be in terrible pain. Well, that great hit that you saw on my Instagram, in the video you see me holding a prong collar.
Yeah.
And I size the dog and you put it on, I walk out the room and come back and go, and then I just did a couple of things. And she's not yanking the dog, she's just doing a couple of things and the dog calms down.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just, again, there's a spectrum of people that just misconstrue and put out a lot of misinformation to deter people because of their own agenda.
Right.
Like they don't care about how you feel at the end of the day with your dog. They care about that the dog's not being hurt.
I mean, we've been trying a year now for positive reinforcement techniques, and I do think that he gets them. Like, he knows he's not supposed to be on the couch, and he won't go on the couch when we're in the room, but we go take a shower or whatever, come back out, he's sitting where he's not supposed to be. So like,
yeah, and he is super treat motivated, but it's like, again, it's like super dependent, and sometimes we have to ratchet up the, it's like you ratchet up the treats.
And the stimulant, the negative, like me yelling at him, no, get down, is not high enough or like negative enough for him to listen all the time.
Well, if anything else, it creates more energy.
Yeah.
Because now you're barking at each other.
Yeah.
Right? And when we do corrections, like I can do a harsh correction and be completely passive. Because the equipment does the work for me. And because people are concerned about if I get a create issues with my dog, and I go, only when you bring in emotion. The frustration, the yelling, the anger, that's actually what creates issues, and not a harsh correction. Because dogs, if you see them correct each other, once it's resolved, they go about their business.
I mean, after he bit me, it was like nothing ever happened. He was like, what?
Yeah, stop. They just let it go. I corrected you, you backed off, cool, we're good. And you're like, shit, dude, like I gotta go to the doctor now. So that's dog. Okay. So here, with a case like this, because you don't have a dog that's, in a sense, actively aggressive. You have a dog that doesn't like to be corrected, has some personal space boundaries, right? And is willing to escalate to that degree. So, how do we go about this is one, we respect that personal space. I cannot make him like you putting your face in his face when he's sleeping, okay? He gave you a correction and I just go respect it, okay? And just be mindful going forward, you know, if you're having a family and kids, teaching kids those boundaries.
I know that's one of my main concerns, is like how do you have a toddler around him?
Correct, right? Now, I was raised old school. I was spanked. So if I had a lady, and this is a true story, I was at Pop Ellie's over on Diversity, just west of Halstead.
Oh yeah, we used there.
I know, and so I remember this call. Hello, hi, talking with Dr. Nate. Sure, this is Jesse. Back when I still answered my phone, I didn't have Maria. And she's like, I want to get training for my dog. He's bit my son. Tell me about what happened. Well, my son just won't learn. He's been bit about 4 to 5 times now.
45?
4 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah. 45, I'm 4 to 5, right? And she's going on, and then everything the dog was doing was correct. She's like, you know, he goes after the dog, and the dog walks away, and then he corners the dog, and the dog bites him. So at the end of the conversation, I'm like, lady, I can't help you. I'm like, you shouldn't have a kid.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have a dog, you shouldn't have a kid. I'm like, you need to, you know, I was like, I can't help you. Unfortunately, there was nothing I could tell her. Because it's like, who doesn't learn from that? You know, and it's your kid. That's your responsibility, right? So for me growing up, if I was disrespecting the dog's space, my mom would just spank me and say, leave the fucking dog alone, right? And that's what I wanted to tell the ladies, like, spank her damn, because she's like, anything, she's like, he just won't listen. I'm like, spank your goddamn kid, because he's not listening to the bites, right? So, yeah, it's all about setting boundaries, okay? Now, that's, of course, some people how to raise their kids, but if I see a child pressing, so this actually happened to me in Oz Park when we were training. I saw these two young girls, probably like 6 to 8-ish, with their golden doodle, just like running across, right? And I see them running towards us. And the dog I was working with was friendly. But I was like, yeah, this is not gonna happen because I know what they're gonna do. And they come up running to us like, hey, come in. Well, nope, get away from us. And they were just like, right? Like, holy crap, right? And then they're like, and they just walked away. But they ended up running to another family with the dog. Couple of things here. They're at Oz Park. Oz Park is a massive park. I'm like, where are the parents to these 2 little kids running up to strangers asking to socialize their dog? 2, what if they brought that dog to the wrong dog? Right? So I was very blunt and I made it an unpleasant experience because I wanted them to learn you don't run out to strangers with your dog. Okay? Now we ended up seeing them again at a later point with a different client. And they were the same thing, but they ran around us. They didn't come to us.
They learned.
Right? Well, they learned with me, but they didn't learn with anybody else, unfortunately. Right? So, when it comes to that, it's teaching children boundaries. Because children will treat the dogs that they meet outside the same as the dogs that they are within the home. So, like, let's say you have a relative who brings a kid over, and the kid's like just snuggling all over, right? He's learning that behavior. And then when he goes to a friend's house and he tries it with their dog, and that dog goes, hey, I don't know you, kid. Boom. You see? So there's a bigger picture to this stuff. So us as adults, and I tell you this just, not because I'm trying to compare one to this guy, because this way you can start teaching children boundaries, right? Because you want to think like, okay, yeah, they're going to apply this to another dog, and it may not be the right dog, okay? Now you have a bit more of an incentive because of your experience, right? But the same thing with the mini golden doodle. Right? I wouldn't be like, oh, you can't do it to him, but you can do it to him.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
Then the kid's gonna think, oh, I can't touch these dogs that look like this, but these little golden doodle things, I can do it. Okay? So that things get a little bit tricky. And I've had plenty of clients in the past who have had dogs that were completely friendly, and then they had a baby, and the dog did not like the baby. It's not uncommon. Okay? Because we mature very slowly. We start crawling after a few months, and then we start wobbling around, and then we start walking, right? So since it's such a slow process, dogs are like, whoa, you went from like not moving to moving, and I don't like you anymore, right? So it's not uncommon, and what I tell people is you just have them coexist. And typically over the course of time, the dog just goes, oh, you're just another human in the family. And then the bond happens. Everybody wants the cute Instagram, social media pictures to get 100 likes or whatever, and they put their dog on top of their dog and all that stuff, and go, do not do that, okay? It's something that will happen, and it'll just happen over time, okay? I have a client right now, well not right now, I trained a dog like 8 years ago, it's one of like the most severe cases I've ever worked with. Bit the husband, bit the wife, bit the mother-in-law, like a lot of bites, right? They had a baby, they just had their second baby, but they called me in, and they're like, hey Jesse, we're having a family now, right? What do we do? And I'm like, boundaries, and then more boundaries, right? I'm like, your kid and this dog may not ever interact outside of like seeing each other from different rooms.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking, like, can we get a house that has a basement? Like, let him in the basement and like keep them separate somehow, I don't know.
There's a number of answers, okay? But the main thing is, of course, teach the child respect boundaries, okay? So here, with this kind of case, again, I don't think you have an aggressive dog. I think you have a dog that is not afraid of conflict, is willing to escalate, and you know he's a sizable dog, so he's going to do a sizable bite. Okay, a lot of it's just, of course, education. Okay, this is what we do. Now, when it comes to reactivity stuff, that is something, of course, that you want to work on because we don't want them to be barking because it makes it unpleasant. Also, just pulling you and stuff, and you slip on ice, you can potentially injure yourself.
I can't walk him. He just pulls and pulls and pulls.
Yeah. So, with the e-collar, You're doing really good, by the way. You're very consistent. Yeah.
So yes, but you said so like the harness. You said like reinforces that leash reactivity or leads to the leash reactivity.
Yeah.
And you said like the gentle leader and the prong collar are both options that wouldn't contribute to that.
So the reason why I don't do gentle leader or prong anymore is they take too much skill. Okay, so that's the 40 to 60%.
Oh right, yes.
Okay. So because I want consistency, I want everybody that comes in here that comes out going like, wow, like that was worth the $1,000 that I paid, right? Because I've had people say like, Jesse, I'll pay your rate, just train my dog with food. I'm like, no. I'm like, because I know that when you're done with training, you're gonna be like, that was not worth $1,000. I just took my money. That's not how I operate, right? I know with e-collar, I can fix. Like I get maybe $2 to $3 a year that are extreme cases that we get a lot of progress, but they don't make as much progress as like the other, 99% of dogs that I work with. Okay, so it's the most consistent tool. Plus, we don't have to worry about physical strength. Right? So I had a young lady, this is like the most popular story I ever tell, about 90 pounds. And she had a 150-pound Great Dane. Okay, who was leash reactive. Okay, and she lived in the middle of Wicker Park, so she saw dogs all the time. So she had to do prong with e-collar because she needed the most leverage. So I didn't rely on prong to fix the problem. That was for the e-collar. The prong was to give her more of an advantage because of that 60-pound difference. Okay, so. But almost all our dogs are trained on just the e-collar. Every now and then, we train them with prong and e-collar for more leverage. So for the reactivity, the first thing that we teach is the heel, which is leash walking at your side. My style of heel is very strict. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. If I take 1 step, the dog takes 1 step. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. Okay. This is with the completely slack leash to no leash if the owner so wants, and I don't care what the environment is. So like in the summertime, we were training at Oz Park. And Oz Park is crazy busy, right? So most places, they train in a room like this, right? And then you go out and then you have a hard time transferring stuff. We were out right in the middle of it. Off-leash dogs, skateboarders, rollerbladers, bikers, strollers, bar mitzvahs, baseball games, everything. And dogs are learning right there, okay? That's the power of e-collar.
Yeah, I just can't even imagine.
Yeah, that is.
And just go to our YouTube. Because we record everything, right? Just go to YouTube and then go back to August and then just pick a video like, oh yeah, they're outside here, click on it. There you go, right? So e-collar allows you to override the environment, okay? Because that's 0 to 127. With a prong collar, let's say he's being reactive and he's at a 20 and you correct him and your harshest correction is a 10 on the prong collar, you're not gonna get anywhere because the dog is too far gone. And it's one of the most common problems that we get. And I have had a number of consultations recently where the owner had the dog on a prong collar, and it worked them to a point, and then it was ineffective. Because the dog was like, nah, this is nothing. Because it's like, we bite each other. What are you going to do with the prong collar, right? Because the prong collar doesn't actually puncture the dog.
And it wouldn't help for when we're in the house and he's barking at us during dinner, like.
For stuff like that, it could, because it's lower level, or it may not, right? The other problem with it is that it can be too confrontational, because it's you correcting the dog. With the e-collar, the dog doesn't know where it's coming from. Okay, so so when I work with my fear aggressive dogs, if I correct them with the prong collar, they get more scared. Because they're like, you're gonna hurt me, and then I hurt them, and they're like, oh shit, this is why I'm scared of you. With the e-collar, dog don't know where it's coming from. Right, so I can correct the aggression and push the dog past fear, but the dog has no idea that it's me manipulating the collar. Okay, so that's there's pros and cons to every tool, but e-collar is the one that has the least amount of time. Okay. So the first thing we cover is the heel. That's going to be our reference point for the reactivity. Okay, the heel also fixes about 60 to 70% of problems. So like this here, this overstimulation, this constant need of interaction or like attention, a lot of this may go away just from discipline. Okay, because he's not, no one's, how do you say, put him in his place. We've tried, or I'm sure you've tried, like you said, you told him no and all that stuff, but dogs don't do that to each other. They just bite each other. So once, and I call the e-collar biting the button, once you start biting them and giving them a taste of this medicine, that's when things start to change. Okay, so again, that great hit, we put a prong on him, we mimicked the dog bite, did a couple of things, and he was finally able to settle so we could have a conversation, because we were talking his language. Okay, so that's the importance of these tools. Aversives are healthy. It's how you apply them that can be unhealthy. If you apply them out of anger, or frustration, or for the intent of just being mean, right? That of course is unhealthy. But for me growing up, being spanked, someone could say like, oh my God, your mom hit you? And I'm like, well, I don't think of it as being bad because I was being a little dick.
Yeah.
You know, but if I talk back to my mom, like I talked back to my mom one time. One time in 33 years of my life, I talked back to my mom once. And guess what happened? I got slapped right in the face. First and last time I ever did that.
Yeah.
Learned that lesson real quick, right?
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, I was like, I deserved it. I was talking back to my mom. Don't disrespect your mom like that, right? Boom, learned my lesson. I don't view it as unhealthy because my mom never went over the top. I always feel like she went adequate to what I needed, right? Same thing for the dog. Now, some dogs are different and they may need a harsher correction than other dogs, but that's just that dog. So if you see me work with your dog and another dog, you might say, like, well, how come their numbers are lower, Jesse? I'm like, because they're listening at a lower number. Your dog is not, right? And I had a dog that was like, it was a Schnauzer, maybe like 20 pounds, and the dog's level is 80 out of 127. Really big, just contraction like this, right? Would not listen to anything else. Anything lower than 80 would not listen. Okay, 20-pound little Schnauzer.
Wow.
Right? And the dog wasn't yelping, the dog wasn't in pain.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the number it needed in order to be compliant.
Yeah.
Okay? So size, breed, temperament, anxious, nervous, fearful, none of that stuff matters. It all just pertains to that dog's specific resiliency to the collar. Okay? And I help you figure all that stuff out.
Okay.
So we do heal. What does the heal fix? Right? And then you come back class 2, I ask you a few questions. You tell me the progress report. Okay, cool. This sounds normal. We're gonna make a couple of adjustments. We're gonna work on the second half of heal. See you in a week. And then you come back. How are we going? Great, Jesse. Reactivity's almost gone. We just had with the dog barks at them. That's where we struggle. I go, not a problem. That's common. When this happens, you're gonna go to this, you're gonna do this. Then we move on to the next thing. Okay? Because the only real problem that I see here is the reactivity and the resource guarding. Okay? So reactivity, we cover with heal. Resource guarding, he needs to be taught how to formally release something. Okay?
Yeah.
So for a dog, if he has a bone, even though you gave him the bone and you paid for it at PetSmart, okay, he does not know that it's your bone that you're gifting him. Okay? He goes, oh, you're surrendering this? Mine. Right? So then if you go back for it, and hey buddy, I'm gonna need that back. It is mine, right? So you've surrendered it. So we need to teach him that he needs to release something when we tell him to. Okay?
Yeah.
And we can do this completely in a completely safe manner where we do not need to provoke aggression. Okay? A lot of people think when we do resource guarding, oh, you're gonna give the dog something and then you're gonna piss him off and then you're gonna remote him. And I go, no, we don't have to even do that. I can give him a bone, be in the kitchen, looking at him from 40 feet away, 30 feet away, drop it, remote him, and make him release from a distance. I don't need to create conflict, right? So I'm teaching him how to release something outside of the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas people think you create the problem and then correct it, not always.
Yeah.
Okay?
So then, would the long-term goal in that situation be that like eventually he's just responsive to the verbal cue, or would it be kind of like you consistently use?
Depends on the case. Sure. Every case is different. If you practice enough and it's all about time, yes, your dog can learn a formal out where he'll release it and walk away. We're conflict-free. We don't need the collar.
Right.
Okay? If you're like in a controlled context, like your home.
Yeah.
But if you're at the dog park or something and there's a ball that's uncontrolled context, right? You're gonna want to have a tool. So like I have a dog right now that we're working with who's dog social but resource guards. And when he's at the park, if there's tennis balls, he's like, there's gonna be a fight. I know it for sure.
Yeah.
Right? So I go, okay. I was like, well, when we go to the dog park then, all the tennis balls are off limits.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, like your dog can't touch the tennis balls. So if the dog can't touch them, the dog can't possess them. Right? And then I was like, he can play with the dogs, but he cannot have the tennis balls. So then he asked, well, what if I go to the park and then play fetch with them? And I go, that's fine, because you're not at the dog park.
Yeah.
We're learning context. At the dog park, you can't have these things, but when we're in the field and we have the space ourselves, you can have the one and throw for you. Okay? You can get that type of stuff. It's just people sometimes get too complicated. And they're like, well, but I want to go to the dog park so that then my dog can play ball with other dogs. I go, well, that's not your dog. Your dog doesn't like it, that's why your dog is starting fights. Right? So then we go, it's either you pick one or the other. You're not gonna have both. Okay? So that resource guarding is simple because it's around the resource. And when we have resource guarders, I just tell people to err on the side of caution and assume anything that the dog has, it's gonna guard. Okay? So like me, if I don't know a dog, I assume resource guarder. So if I took my dogs to a dog park and I see a dog drinking water, and I see my dogs going to drink water as well, I don't let them. I correct them and deter them away from the water bowl because I don't know that dog. right? Because I've seen fights start over the water bowl. So if I just assume and I don't allow my dogs there, at least while there's a dog actively drinking, I prevent something happening. And then after the dog's gone, then my dogs can go drink water.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's just being more kind of aware of dogs and animals and then making assumptions, and that kind of helps prevent a lot of things from happening. Okay?
Now,
But
I don't know if we mentioned this, I might have written it down, but he's hard of hearing too. So do you feel like the verbal cues will still be effective? Like, we don't know how much he can hear. I think he can hear enough, but like, is there a way to do like hand gestures or something to pair
so
with?
we can. The other thing is with e-collar, so we have a completely deaf bull terrier that we train.
Okay.
And it was all just through e-collar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the
it's
only thing
possible,
that, yeah, with e-collar, because he's completely deaf. So if he's at the park with his owner just taps the collar and he can feel it and he knows to return. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just about conditioning.
Yeah.
The other stuff, I mean, yes, we can do through hand cues and stuff, but a lot of it's actually through what we call default responses. So if I have him on a leash like this and we're walking and I train him with the e-collar, his assumption is to walk here, with or without words.
Yeah.
Okay. When I come to a stop, his default is to automatically sit, with or without words. Okay. If he's off leash at the park and I remote him in that context, he's going to think, oh, I need to return.
Okay. Yeah.
When it comes to things like the down command, like for instance for the bull terrier, we just touched his shoulders very lightly and tapped, and he would go into a down. And when we would pat our leg, that meant to pop into a heel. And then when we taught him place, we would just simply point and he'd go to the place. Okay. So I would just assume, like I would probably do some sound tests, but then if it's like, yeah, it's kind of hit or miss, then we just train him like as if he's a deaf dog.
Okay.
You know. So that's not a problem with
Okay.
either.
Great.
Other questions?
So I thought actually
We were
I should consult the notes list because I didn't know we forget questions.
Oh, we wanted to get your opinion on muzzling.
Yes.
Like he needs his nails cut, and anytime we go near his paws, he snaps. And
Well, like, and here's the thing: when he does it, it's like it's not like he's like biting, but it's like
he's showing us he doesn't want it, and then he'll run away.
yeah, he'll kind of his head
So
up.
it's like
and
that's
kinda-
gonna escalate, I would assume, if we force it.
Yeah, that's a good assumption, right? So what you do is yes, muscle conditioning, and then that is something we could work on. That does take time because dogs are going to have their nails clipped. So when a dog does that, I do both positive and negative. Okay, because so reactivity is simple. I don't want that. I don't need to pair that with food. It's just you do that, there's going to be a consequence, right? But for things like grooming the nails or trimming the nails, that's not supposed to happen in the world. Is we pair positive with the negative, right? Muzzle conditioning, of course, to keep you safe. But then if he tries to go for your hand, you can correct that, and then when he doesn't, he gets rewarded. Okay, so then he starts to go like, oh, okay, like it balances out that whole that whole concept or context. I have a client right now, her dachshund, when you pick him up, will bite you, right? But he's an older guy, and she needs to pick him up. She like move him to take him off the couch and stuff like that. So we're doing positive and negative because dogs are meant to be picked up. So when it comes to things that are unnatural to them, it's a balance of positive and negative. When it's something that's more natural to them, I usually just do negative. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions?
So with, I guess this is actually still with the muzzle training. With the muzzle training, is that, I guess like, we just never really, we don't know much about the process.
It's simple.
Yeah.
Muzzle. Put like a Ziploc bag in it. We use a basket style type because that's meant for extended wear. A Ziploc bag, punch it in, smooth it out. Dog food in there, his meal. Give him the meal, he eats from the muzzle. Okay. If he pulls his mouth away from the muzzle, it disappears. So then he goes, oh crap, every time I pull my mouth away, it disappears. I don't want that to happen, so it's going to incentivize him to keep his mouth in the muzzle. And we have videos that we can send you. You just ask Maria, please send us the muzzle videos. And so send you a link. We have one or two that we made ourselves, and then others that we recommend to other trainers. And it's a pretty simple, straightforward process. You would want to start that process as soon as possible. So if you already have a muzzle, even if it's not perfect, just start something. Okay? Because muzzle conditioning does take time. Some dogs get over it really quickly. Some dogs can take a couple of months. Okay?
Yeah.
Other questions?
Sorry.
No.
With the collar, so it sounds like most of the time it would be the norm to like have the collar just like on him all the time, except maybe sleeping.
When you need it.
Just when
So when you're on a walk, maybe if guests are coming over and he's a little bit too rambunctious, you know, where you're going to trim his nails, you know, so it's on when you need it.
Okay.
One of the most common questions I get is when does the e-collar go away? You guys drive?
Yep.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yep.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
Yeah. Most people don't, right? It's called opportunistic behavior.
Sure.
And we do that because we can get away with it.
Yeah.
But if you see like, you know, cameras ahead, or you see a squad car, what happens?
You still
Slow down, right? Because you know now there's threat of consequence. Same thing for dogs. It's part of survival instinct. So like if there's a pond of water, there's an alligator in it, and the animals are aware, they do not drink. Alligator leaves, they come and drink. Okay, opportunistic behavior. So for dogs, same thing, is that e-collar is the top of the collar. When it's present, he's going to behave himself. When it's not present, he's going to push the boundaries a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Inside the home, there's less stimuli to argue with. Outside, there's a lot of things, right? You have squirrels, rabbits, dogs, off-leash dogs, sounds, scents, you know, chicken bones on the street, and all that stuff. It's not that you're always having to use it. It's just, again, the presence of it just puts them in a mindset where you go, okay, it's like, behave myself.
Yes.
Also, in case of an emergency, something happens, off-leash dog runs up to you or something like that, sparks a fight, you have a means of control. I had a client who takes her dog to the park, and her dog is social, but there was a tennis ball and her dog and another dog went after it at the same time, and it turned into a dog fight. And she capped out the collar and continuous, which is the harshest correction you can do. Her dog 180 out of the fight. Wow. Split second. Wow. And she called me, she's saying like, oh my God, I feel so bad, my dog yelled, blah, 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 blah. And I said, but it was either that or gamble dog.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, is anybody hurt? She said, no. I was like, are the dogs hurt? She said, no. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
There you go. One moment of, yeah, sure, a harsh discomfort prevented who knows what from happening.
Right.
Okay? And that very same dog has super high prey drive. And she was at Charles Park over in Lincoln Park. And the dog was playing, and then a rabbit just beeline across the field. And her dog saw it and took off after.
Yeah.
Same thing, before it got to the street, she had to cap it out at 127. Dog jumped up in the air, 180, came right back to her, right?
They go so good. I have a rabbit at my parents' house and he won't leave it alone. And he just, yeah, that'd be great for that.
So, in case of an emergency, you still have a means of control.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like, again, it's the only tool that gets you as close to 100% as possible.
Sure.
Pending you, of course, do your homework, and pending, you know, you do what you need to do in order to get that control back. Other questions?
You were kind of saying like the structure of the classes, is it like one set curriculum, or is it like per him,
So-
what he does?
Right now, what I pick up is we have reactivity, we have resource guarding, and we have touch sensitivity. Okay, so to me that sounds like the priorities. So I know we need to teach heal for sure to cover the reactivity. Okay, that's 2 classes. That also sets up, that teaches the dog how e-collar works, so that has to happen anyways. And then we can move into, for instance, touch sensitivity. Okay, it's really simple. I just show you how to do it, and then you take the time to do so. That could be a class, or it could be a couple of classes. Okay, the last thing would be the resource guarding. Again, I teach you how to go about it, and then you go about and you take the time to follow through and practice that. You're looking at months of training on that stuff. Okay, if you're going once a week practicing this stuff, you're obviously going to take even longer than a couple of months, right? If you're working on it regularly, you know, once a day or whatever, you're going to make much quicker progress.
Sure.
Every case is different, I don't know. The hardest thing of all that stuff is going to be the touch sensitivity. Okay? The resource guarding is actually pretty simple. The problem with resource guarding is once we start putting rules to things, dogs tend to lose interest in things. So like, let's say you give them a bone, and you're practicing with the bone, at some point you say, well, the bone sucks because it's not like I can have it just like free for all, right? Now there's rules around it. So then the dog tends to lose interest. It's just part of the process, and it's also why it takes longer to do resource guarding, okay? But it's pretty straightforward. So those things in itself, I would put you in the 6-week program range. 2 for the reactivity, maybe a 3rd one on it, depending on how it progresses. Then we had at least a couple for the resource guarding and the touch sensitivity. If you're wanting more obedience control, the next thing that he needs to learn is recall, or common call. That's the next most important command. It's not the most important. That would put you in the 9-week range. Okay. Then we have a 12-week or 12-class program, and because you have those variables of the behavior stuff, if we didn't have resource guarding or touch sensitivity and stuff, I would say like in 12 classes you'd have a fully off-leash trained dog.
Yeah.
Okay, or at least the tools, and you just practice until you get them there. But because we have the variable of the behaviors,
Right.
I don't know if we're gonna cover everything within those 12 classes, right? But regardless, I always tell people, start with 12 first if you want more. And then once we get to 12, we see where we're at. Almost always, people are happy at the 12-week point. They're like, man, this is so much, like, thank you. And I go, great, thank you. If you decide like, no, we really want more, then you would just buy more classes.
Gotcha.
Okay? But I don't ever really tell people more than 12, unless it's a case like the one that I posted on my Instagram. That one is what I would put in a behavior range, because behavior is a variable, there's no guarantee.
Sure, could take
So-
longer.
Exactly, so what they do is they pay a much higher premium price that lasts the lifetime of the dog. You know, so it's $42.50. So like, I tell them 12 to 16 classes, it might take 20 classes, but they're not paying extra, because they paid that premium.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and then like in 2 years, if something happens, they call me up, hey Jesse, you know, this happened, can you come back? Sure, they don't pay anything extra, it's covered.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
This
Okay.
guy, in most cases, it's just standard stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in I would put in, even though the classes are obedience classes, we also do cover behavior. Okay. So it just comes down to how much you want to achieve.
Sure.
So you have 6 would be the bare bones. We really focus on the important stuff. 9 and 12 would be if you want more. Now you can do 6 and do another 6. However, you'd be paying the rate of the 6 classes. Okay. So math-wise, I have a 3-class program, which is meant for like reactivity only. That's $550. The 6 classes is $950, for example.
Okay.
So if someone did 3 and then 3, it would be $1,100. If they do 6, it's $950.
Okay.
So if they say, hey, we commit to this up front, then they get a lower per class rate.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I don't care what you do, just letting you know that 6 would be where I would put you in terms of giving you all the tools. It's really then just practice and repetition to get it to where we need it to be. Okay. Other questions?
I've never seen it.
Yeah, this is a new one.
Are they group classes?
No.
No, they're
This
just
is one of them.
Are they like in here?
We are at
out-
my facility.
Okay.
In the winter, it's also, we were training at Oz in the summer,
Yeah.
but now that it's obviously cold,
Yeah.
95% of my clientele is now back here at the facility.
Okay.
So I have a 13,000 square foot space. We have plenty of space to do the leash walking, the recall stuff, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
okay.
And then we use this room as well for like, you know, the touch sensitivity and all that.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem.
Okay. Is there a specific collar that you would recommend?
Yeah, Mario will send you the information, but he would need the Dog Show Black Edition. It runs about $325-ish with tax.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's an investment, but it will last you, like could last you his life.
Yeah.
So I've had mine for 8 years.
Oh wow.
Okay. The most common thing that we get is it's a rechargeable lithium battery, so the battery does die over multiple recharges.
Yes.
But that's a few years. Okay.
Cheaper than my ER bill.
Yeah, cheaper than the ER bill, exactly. It's a 1 mile range, fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver, and it's the best collar there is. And it's meant for a dog of his size.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll see others that are cheaper. Trust me, you don't want to go with those.
Yeah.
Just go with the one I recommend.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
Did we get anything on the list?
I think we did. Yeah, some of it we covered before we got to, just in our conversation. Yeah.
So you're confident that he can be a safe dog around?
With education,
Yeah.
you know, like, I can't change who your dog is.
Yeah.
You know, we can, like, certain things we can, like, you know, again, the counter conditioning and stuff like that. Now, if he just hates having his nails trimmed, like, nothing can make him like it, right? We have exercises to do so.
Yeah.
But if he's just, like, it's like with us. If I hate green beans, you can't make me like green beans.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's really, that's why we do positive and negative.
Yeah.
Right? We deter one behavior with a consequence, but then we also motivate with a high reward.
Yeah.
And then also you have to look into how much effort you're putting into it.
Yeah.
There's some, of course, degree of homework that you're going to have to do. But other than that, again, the dog fight bites, I don't factor into the history.
Okay.
The one where he was sleeping, you put your face in his face, that was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But again, probably caught by surprise. Now, if you told me, hey Jesse, every time I try to sit on the couch, he tries to attack me, that's a different problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually the one thing we left out was previous to him coming to us, or maybe we mentioned it, he I guess how they learned about the resource guarding was he was like a 3-month-old puppy, and another puppy was in the foster home, and he bit the leg of that other puppy going for the food bowl. So yeah, I mean, again.
And that's just genetics.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The resource guarding thing is again easier because it's context based.
Yeah.
And we would take precautions, put everything away. Anytime he has anything, he'll be off in his own space with it. We don't need to piss him off in order to like try to challenge him to get it back. I can make him release it. He leaves the space and I can pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay. He may need to call around whenever he has something. I don't know how that's going to pan out. Every case is different. Okay.
Is it the same? Is it resource guarding if like my dog's over here playing with something and he sees that and wants it?
Nah, it's just a baby jackass.
Because it's like he can be guarding a bone and then my dog has like something he doesn't care at all about, and all of a sudden he.
Yeah, he's just being a bully.
Yeah.
He's just being demanding.
And he knows he gets it because my dog will just leave it and run away.
Yeah. And then unfortunately empowers him.
Yeah.
So what I would teach him is, like, let's say he tries to go for the other dog's bone, I would correct that behavior.
I see.
Okay?
Yeah.
But then you have to be fair, and if the other dog's trying to take his bone, technically you have to correct the other dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a balance to it. I have a very high standard for my dogs, but at the same time there has to be a very clear black and white
Yeah.
kind of set of rules.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Anything else?
I'm done.
Yeah, I think that covers what we came in with. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we're gonna get in contact with you. Don't be alarmed if it's a day or two.
Okay.
We are crazy busy with consultation requests and new clients booking. This is, it's like been like double or triple of what it normally is.
Yeah.
So if you leave out here and you're good to go, you can just email her back and say like, hey, we're good, and she's gonna wait for me to give her the information, and then she'll follow up and stuff.
Okay.
But if you already know off the top of your head, like Maria, put us down for 9, she'll just put you in queue, and she'll start that process so you can already get in there, as opposed to like waiting for her to get back to you, because that's usually how she operates.
Okay.
And then from there, she will provide you with the training forms, help you with the caller, she'll send you the link to it, and then any other questions you have, you can feel free to ask, and then give her whatever length of time you want to work on, and then we'll just get you started.
Okay. And it's once a week.
For an hour.
Is it flexible days, times, type of thing?
For the most part, I mean, I
Yeah.
train, but my schedule is usually reverse, evenings and weekends, because most people are 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And now it seems like we're kind of going back to normal, right, from COVID, that people are going back to work, so that 9 to 5 is starting to kick in again. So definitely, if you're available during like the weekdays, during like a daytime, much faster to get in, because nobody really books those times.
Right.
Evenings and weekends tend to be high demand. So, but I'm not sure what the schedule looks like. I just look at it the day of, and I'm just like, okay, what's the day gonna be?
I just know my schedule's all.
We have like kind of opposite schedule.
Yeah, if you have rotating schedules and stuff, we wouldn't put you on a set time then, if that happens to be the case. But then, I mean, that's you for a couple of weeks, which isn't a bad thing.
Okay.
It just gives you more time to practice stuff.
Yeah.
That's actually a question I had. I was like, it's not bad if we do end up with a little space in between classes. Okay.
I got a couple of clients right now that have a planned vacation there in the middle of the program.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't worry about
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Great.
It doesn't affect, as long as you're consistent with, you're gonna see once you start working with your training, you're gonna be like, holy shit, this works.
I really hope so.
And then it's, even if I don't see you for a couple of weeks, as long as you're doing the same thing,
Yeah.
or following the instructions, you're just gonna continue to make progress.
Yeah. So it took him an hour.
Yeah. Is it exactly 6:30 right now? Well, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we will be in touch.
Yeah, no worries. And if you have any other questions, like I said, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, Maria will follow up.
Okay.
And then, yeah, hopefully we'll see you really soon.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome, guys.
Sounds good.
It's a pleasure.
So much.
Thank you
Yeah.
guys as well.
I'm a little hopeful that.
I guess I should put that link back up for.
I think it's still too late.